If you haven't already done it, make sure you educate people on the price of fuel. Thank you, politicians, for wanting to increase the price of fuel and try to convert over to the green energy. As I'm sure you know, if you're in the world of trucking, a lot of, at least as of the time of this video, the electric semis are exploding. So it's back to good old-fashioned diesel, which the price is going up and up and up constantly. And because the trucks only get like 8 miles to a gallon or something like that, sometimes, you know, plus or minus a little bit, it's costing a lot. And then the cost of fuel has to be factored into everything you buy, including farmers that have to plow their fields and stuff. If the cost of fuel of diesel goes up, it's going to cost them more to harvest. So that's going to make things skyrocket in price more. So yay, inflation. Now, I'm not going to give you this whole lecture on this kind of thing, but that and that as of the time of this video, it is September 20th. We are getting close to the time we're going to have to start putting snow tires on, or not snow tires, but you're going to have to start putting snow chains on. Wheels aren't turning, you're not earning. So when you stop on the side of the road to put on the chains, if you get to go down the hill, you know, spend an hour doing that, then you get down to the bottom of the hill, and you have to get back in the negative 10-degree weather in order to take the chains back off. And this is fighting for position with the other semis in there. Maybe you have to wait for your turn or whatever, and then you have to take the chains off because they don't want you to drive down the road with chains on. I don't know. I've never done this before, but I've done some research, and people say that some areas of the country it's really rough. But who knows? We'll have to see. By the time this is airing, I will definitely know, and I'll probably be ranting about it. All right, let's play catch up. The day after my last video, I was in New Jersey early in the morning. I got there about 15 minutes early. Now, one thing about New Jersey that's interesting is that they have, you can't just turn left or turn right from a lot of these bigger roads. You have to take what's called an all-turn lane. You have to turn to the right, and it loops you around and then back around to it. So if you want to make a left turn, you can't just make a left turn. You turn around to the right, and then you come up in a perpendicular angle, and a traffic light will turn green, and then you drive to the other side. So that's kind of an interesting idea. At first, it was kind of annoying, but then I kind of figured it out once I did it once. Now, granted, roundabouts are the very most effective thing. They're a little annoying in a semi, so make sure if you do have a roundabout, make sure you bevel the sides. Don't make them really sharp corners like that. Make sure you bevel it a little bit. That way, if the semi does have to jump up on it a little bit, it's not going to tear up the tires. Anyway, so I got to Cinnaminson and pulled up behind 3 trucks that had pods on them, and there were some pods around there, and I'm like, this just does not feel right. It's like almost 6 a.m. and there's no one here. And then I look over, and on the other side, like not the thing I'm at, there's a little bitty, like a little small lake, and then on the other side I see another pod semi going that way, and I'm like, it must be over there. So I make a U-turn, go over there, pull in, and then sure as the world, they're offloading pods. So I check in and offload the pods that I had, and I was sent a pre-assignment, so I was picking up there, and then it's a rush. So it's a rush to get to Liverpool, New York, and then to Rochester, New York before the end of the day. Geez, the Northeast, I tell you. There's a reason why a lot of companies that advertise driving jobs will say no Northeast ever, or no forced Northeast. There's a reason why. It's not a great place to drive. It's highly annoying, very congested, the roads are narrow, and in Rochester, for example, there's a lot of no truck roads. You take the ones that you can actually go on, and there's like a 4-way intersection, and you know how like you know, most of the time if you only have like a 3 or a 4 lane road, a semi has to pull out into them and go to, you know, like go into one of the oncoming lanes in order to actually make the turn. Well, they allow people to stop right up underneath the intersection. I mean, it's not like way back and cars have to stop and give you room. No, they'll just go ahead and pull right on up. So if you have larger than like a 30 foot trailer, you're probably not going to be able to make it very well without jumping curbs. There's also a reason why on almost every single one of those turns that you make in a truck, on a truck route, there's a reason why the signs are a good 5 feet away from the intersection or the turn, because they want to make sure that semis are going to go up on the curb. I mean, I saw a lot of semis do it, and admittedly, I did it too, because when you can hold up traffic, try to get by there, but still you're going to jump up on the curb, and it's going to annoy you. You're going to pop up on it just a little bit. And granted, there's a reason why the curbs are not sharp. You know, they're not like the really sharp ones like that. They're more rounded. I mean, you just go really, really slow and you try. I mean, I literally pulled all the way across the intersection and then cut all the way out. And I'm seeing these guys there like backing up and trying to give me room. And I'm just like, you know, thank you, you know, because, you know, the light turn was green and it was rush hour by the time I got there. So as they're starting to slow down, I'm like holding my hand out there, you know, waving them back, saying, back up, back up, back up. Get I'm making my turn. And they're just pushing right on up to the light. And I'm like, well, guess what? I'm coming at you. Then they start backing up. And even then, with using all the space in the entire intersection, pulling all the way up, making a hard right turn in the oncoming lane on the far side, even doing that, I still hit you bounced up on the curb. Schneider and Trainer will say, oh, you just killed someone's grandmother. That's what they say. If you go up on the curb and say, oh, you just killed a child. You just killed a, you know, whatever. Believe me, I'm looking, you know, you don't drive the truck, you drive the trailer. And I'm looking at the trailer every single time I make one of those turns. And I'm watching them, and I'm doing my very, very best to not hit anything. And unless I want to jump up on the curb on the far side in order to make some of these turns, then I could avoid having my rear tire jump up on the curb. If I jump up on the curb with my front tires on the other side, no way to win it. Not on some of those intersections. But that's the truck route. You can't take other roads because it says no trucks. That's the way it wants you to go. So that's good fun. Also, because that Rochester location is not in a great neighborhood, he doesn't come out unless you call and tell him, hey, you know, I'm here. Then he opens up the door. Really nice guy was there, though. His name is Norm. He's an owner-operator. He says he crashes overnight at that particular location. He just sleeps there because they don't close the gates. And he asked me if I was going to, you know, when I pulled up there, he says, yeah, you should go right over there. And I said, okay. And he says, that's my place that I sleep overnight whenever I get here early, or if it's at the end of the day and I got to shut down, I sleep there and then I leave the next morning. I'm like, oh, well, that sounds good. So he said, are you leaving, or are you going to give me my spot? And I knew that I had to shut down, you know, for a 34. So, I wasn't going to stay there. Stay there for 34 hours, middle of Rochester, New York. So I was like, nope, I'm getting out of here. How's traffic going south? He says, it's fine. He was right. Once you got through all the stuff and make your annoying turns again, you got out of Rochester, no traffic on the interstates. I went to a truck stop and I shut down there for the night. There was only, out of the whole parking, the entire parking lot, they must have had 80 parking spaces, and there was no more than 8 used the entire weekend. And most of the time, there was only like 5 or 6 people in them. Kind of amazing. But I hung out and I stayed there over the reset. And they had a Dunkin' Donuts built into that. And they had this thing called Snack and Bacon. It says 8 strips. And I was like, oh, 8 strips of bacon for $2.50? Gimme. Then what I didn't realize is that it's 2 pieces of bacon. It's cut into 4 little strips. I don't know. It's still seasoned up and still tasted all right. Learning experience, I guess you could say. I had to take a course online for my family, 4-hour course on Saturday. So I had to sacrifice my last 16 hours. I was late to start on Monday. They sent me out late, and I just sat there off the clock until they gave me an assignment. I was really hoping to be able to drive. I don't like driving too late in the day because then you can't ever pull over. You spend the last 2 hours of the day trying to find a parking spot, or you have to pay for it. I don't want to do that. So I'm going to shut down earlier and just, you know, not drive it. Get up early the next morning. So anyway, shut down for the 34, got up on Sunday and drove from Avon, New York down to Dunn, North Carolina. 643 miles, I think it was, something like that. Pretty good, pretty good. Because I don't really take breaks. I don't shut it down and have food, whatever. Once I hit the road, I hit the road. So I jump up and I have to do a load securement check every 150 miles or 3 hours, whichever comes first. So as soon as I get on the road, I have my dry erase. I'm not going to show it because I already have, well, I'll cover it up. But that's the dry erase board that I use. And I write on top of it the times I'm leaving each one of those and the mileage. So when I first leave in the morning, if it's like at 1 a.m. and my mileage is, like right now, it's 30,767. So tomorrow morning will be 30,767 at whatever time of day that is. And then I know, since I can see that on the passenger side seat, as soon as I start to approach, about 125 miles, something like that, I'll start to look for exits or I'll start to look for rest areas. And if I start to see rest areas beforehand, if it says there's not another rest area for another 43 miles, I'll do the math real quick and say, okay, what's that going to be? That's going to be 143 miles into my drive. I'm like, great, that's where I'll stop. So I do that. Because the longer you can go without taking a stop, the farther down the road you're going to get, less stops you're going to have to make throughout the day. And I love rest areas because you can pull off on the side of the road real quickly, jump out, grab your tire, your winch bar, put on the gloves, go around there, check the check the bud space on your tires, check your securement, whop your tires to make sure they sound good, walk around the entire truck, and you're back in 2 minutes later if everything's secure, which it almost always is. So it only takes like 2 minutes. And then I'm accelerating and leaving, and I don't have to deal with pulling into a fuel island or something like that. It's nice. Rest areas I like. And then in order to unlock the last 3 hours of your day, you got to spend 30 minutes doing something. So usually what I'll do at that point is I'll start planning. I'll usually, whenever I want to take that break, I will stop, and that's when I'm going to try to look at my miles. I'm going to bring up on my phone, look at wherever I'm going, and I'm going to try to determine exactly what mile markers, not mile markers, what things I need to watch for when I'm out there. I can look for turns. I can see what the turn looks like. I can see if there's any landmarks there. I can see basically anything I need to. And it's really cool for the most part. So anyway, that, and I'll also find myself a truck stop for the night. So that's all the part of the paperwork I do. Okay, so from North Carolina, I had a delivery in Jacksonville, one in St. Augustine the next day, and then I went to Orlando, and Orlando was just horrible. That is a bad city to drive in. Everyone's slow. I got there, it was like 12:30 in the afternoon, and everyone's creeping along, and then somebody crashes into somebody ahead in the middle of the intersection. They don't clear the intersection, so they just stay there, slow down everything. By the time I had the pods offloaded and picked up something, then basically I had to shut down. I found a drop lot. Luckily, when I was at the Jacksonville or at the Orlando location, there was another driver there from Schneider who's in the pods account. He came over and said, "Hey, by the way, there's a drop lot nearby if you need it." I'm like, "Oh, cool." No restrooms, no anything. You're in the middle of a dusty field, or parking lot, but still. Since my hours, I was down to 2 hours when I entered Orlando, pulled off the interstate, and by the time I did the drop, it was only 6 miles. I did the drop and I started to go back. I was down to about 45, and I'm like, I'm never going to get out of the city. I'm never going to get out of the city and find a rest area. Florida's really good about letting trucks stop at rest areas and truck parking lots, so that way you can stop there. Now, granted, it's going to pack in. Everyone's in the world's going to be in there. It turns into an obstacle course, but you can still stop. And there's restrooms and whatever. No showers. So anyway, stopped in that drop lot overnight. Got up early the next morning, drove into Jacksonville, did another pickup, and then it was headed out west to Houston. I was able to get across the state and into Moss Point, Mississippi, the same day. So I went from Orlando to Jacksonville to Mosport, Mississippi. Then the next day I got up and I drove. That was this morning. Got up and I drove out here, and I had a drop off this morning at 10 a.m. I made it on time. I actually made it early, but who's counting? And then I was waiting for another job. And I waited around for 4 hours there until I was in my last, knowing that it said like 1.6 miles as the crow flies, so it was like 3 miles on the road. But that's where the nearest truck stop was, where I am right now, Flying J. And what's annoying is that every single parking space here pretty much is reserved. I personally hate this policy. I hate it. I understand you got to pay for the parking lot. But at the same time, drivers, we're on a race to the bottom. We're getting paid less and less. It's more because people don't want to pay shipping. People don't want to pay for freight costs anymore. So guess what that means? It means that they're trying to cut costs wherever they can. And because of the fuel prices going through the roof, and still have a, $100,000 plus truck that you still got to drive down the road, and that requires a lot of expensive maintenance and that kind of stuff, people are not wanting to pay drivers. So it's it's getting a lot more crazy out here with the inflation. So good times, right? But here I am stopped in the drop lot. There was no showers. The pilot I stopped at last night, they were doing construction. And so all of their showers were not operational. I'm like, great, that's 2 nights in a row with no showers. So by the time I got here today, I was starting to smell interesting. And I am so glad I finally got a shower, and I feel good. Feels a lot better now. I really wish that there would be some way that truck companies could pay like a certain amount of money per year, per month, or whatever, so that way your drivers could stay at certain places. There's one parking space for over 11 trucks on the road. That's why it fills up so quickly. This morning, just trying to find a rest area that I could pull off at to do my low securement check, it's an obstacle course. I found one parking space, but there's trucks all barricading it. And so here's something that was kind of fun. I make a really wide turn, cut in really sharp, barely missed the Schneider truck that was in front of me, and cut in. But then I realized that my truck is my trailer is starting to off track in, and I'm watching it in the rearview mirror. And as soon as I see it starting to go over just starting to go over the front of the other truck, I'm like, all right, I got to stop. At this point, what's my option? Backing up? Well, luckily it wasn't. What I was able to do is, because I cut in as close as I could to that Schneider truck, the Schneider trailer that I was next to. So what I did is I cut the wheel really hard so that way the rear drive tires cut in really close to the Schneider truck, and then I went up all the way to it, and then I pulled up all the way, and the trailer was able to pull about this far away. I got out and looked, but it was only about 4 inches away from the front bumper. When I did the turn, I looked at it and says, I believe I can make it. And I ended up being wrong, but only barely. It was just starting to go over, like the front of the trailer was, the front of the truck was here, and the trailer, because of the way I was pulling in there, it started to do this number, just going right over the end. Because it's not like a Peterbilt that's really high. The front end tapers down. So I was looking at it, it's like, oh, it's just starting to go over. I'm like, nope, stop right there. Don't do that. As soon as it just started to go over the bumper, I was like, all right, stop right there. Let's back up and let's straighten this thing out. So I backed up and I cut it all the way in. I'm not going to do that again. That was nerve-wracking. Man, but I did it. There's some things that I've gone slow, but there's some things that have been nerve-wracking, made me nervous. And sometimes I've gotten into it. I'm like, oh, please work out. Please work out. So far, it's all worked out. I'm waiting for it to not one day. And me having to back up in some crazy angle in the middle of the night and having to wake up some truck because I'm pinned in between places and say, can you please back up a couple of feet? Really, really make somebody mad. I cannot wait for that. That's going to be so fun. But I'm learning to not take those risks. Just don't do it. If it's the middle of the night, let someone else. Just loop on through there, and if I'm on an exit or something like that and there's nobody on there, because the exit ramp, you pull off on that and there's a whole bunch, but no one's moving, and you can just stop for a moment in the middle of the drive and I hit the hazards real quick, jump out, check the securement. So far no one has caught me. No one has come up behind me and sat there looking at me like, what are you doing? So that's been nice. I really wish that truck parking lots like this one here, this Flying J, they charge for parking. It's already annoying enough that we're having to deal with all this other stuff on the road. Then we have to pay for reserved parking spaces. I really wish that we could, that our like my company Schneider, I wish that they would have a card or allow me to use my fleet card maybe twice a week, once a week, something like that, to get reserved parking. I know they give us the points. They give us the points. We can use those points towards parking. That's what I did today. But I tell you, the points go really fast, and then at the beginning of the month they reset. They start creeping along again. So you have to wait until they're, double, triple, quadrupled, and then you start making, your points. But then anyway, I really wish that was the case. I wish that, I understand they have to pay for the parking lot somehow, but it's annoying when you have to do that. So tomorrow, I finally got a job. I'm not going to be waiting any longer. I'm going to be picking up in Houston, then going across the others, in rush hour. I'm going to be driving across Houston to, what is it? I forgot what it's called. It's like Humble. It's Humble. And then I'm going back to Maryland, and then back to Cinnamonson. Back to New Jersey. I want to go out west again. I want to go out west. Just a long haul. Just jump on the road, drive out there, spend 5 or 6 days on the road, just drive. Get a good 625 miles a day, 644 I think is my record so far in a day. Just drive. Do less stops. Just drive. But we're doing what we can. One thing that's annoying me about the Pods account is that they say that a lot of, I'm starting to see a lot of notes that says you must give us a 5-hour advance notice of when you're showing up. Well, if I'm going to be there at 6 a.m., I got to call you at 1 a.m.? It says a minimum of 4 hours, minimum of 3 hours, minimum of 5 hours advance notice. I do the ETAs through Schneider and through the logistics on the Pods app. I really wish I didn't have to phone them in or call them or something like that, because then I end up calling in the middle of the night and then they're not there. I'm waiting to actually call somebody and wake them up. Hello? Yes, hello. This is your 5-hour advance notice that I'll be there at 6 a.m. Anyway, that's the latest. That's the latest. Tomorrow I am going to drive, and then I have to shut down for a 34. Basically, I'm doing around 13 to 14 hours almost every single day. And that means that I could drive for 3 or 4 hours and finish out that 70 hours, go from 66 up to 70. But then I would rather have a full 14 hours to drive or to do whatever I need to with it. So I end up sacrificing the last few hours, and I do my 34 reset. That way I can work. When I work a straight shift. That way I don't work like 3 hours, 4 hours, and then shut down for a 34. That's going to be annoying. Because then you spend all day basically just so that way you can work like 3 or 4 hours, drive 125 miles. No. I'll sacrifice those hours after 5 hours and do a full reset. I find that to be much more efficient. I personally like it much better. All right, there you go. There's your update.